Dit is Argusoog Radio.
Een andere kijk op de wereld.
You're listening to Pateo Radio.
Welcome to Pateo Radio. Due to some technical problems, we start a little bit later than usual. I'm sorry for that. The very special guest of this live broadcast masters the most important language of all, namely the language of God. The name of our guest, living in North Carolina, USA, is Randy Powell. Randy, thank you for joining us and welcome to this radio talk show.
Thank you. I appreciate you having me.
Yeah, I'm very happy that you are here. Can you please give a short description of yourself for the listeners?
Yeah, sure. Well, most people are interested in me, I guess, for my work in the Vortex-gebaseerde mathematics project, which, as I'm sure we'll get into, was founded by Marco Rodin, who is a teacher and a good friend of mine. And through the methods that I learned from him, I was able to take the work at first a little bit further when I first put out some of those YouTube videos, and then eventually to where I am now, quite a lot further into the proof of why this mathematics is perfect and why it functions like it does. And so I've been working in that now for the last, 5 years or so, and continually trying to press forward and apply it to computers and technology and most importantly for me, just my own spiritual journey through life, and what helps me to relate to other people, and I think helps other people relate to me. So,
yeah. Are you doing this full time, Randy, or do you have also another part of your life?
Yeah. Well, up until about the last year, I worked in. I have a restaurant called Luna's Living Kitchen that I started with my wife, and it's a health food, kind of raw food restaurant here in North Carolina.
Okay, great.
And so anybody who's been in that business knows that it's around the clock. So I was working really long hours in there and then doing the math work at night, and I did that for a number of years. And finally, in the last year, I had a little bit of help for a period of time, enough to get me out of my day job where I could devote some time to this. And but recently that funding is no more, so I'm now trying to figure out what my next step is. But at the moment, I'm still working on the math project and trying to help push that along.
Okay, can you tell me how it started? Maybe go back to the time you met Marco Rodin and his fascination and his work. In one video you tell that he was your teacher. Can you tell me about the period that you met Marco and how he dragged you into this?
Sure. Well, I met him the way that most everybody meets him. Most of us found out about Marco through the YouTube video that he put up whenever that was, around the time that YouTube was first coming around. I was turned on to that video by a friend, and in some of my videos where I talk about the story of what was going on at that time, there's more detail about how that all came about, a kind of synchronistic thing. And I got really curious and interested about the work, but I never really contacted Marco until sometime later, probably even a couple of years later. That really when Marco and I started communicating a little bit because I had found some really old videos of him and I had a copy of his book that nobody had. And I think he was curious about how I had gotten that. It was kind of a curious affair. So, he gave me a call and we started talking and we had a lot of similar interests. So, we just kind of developed a little bit of a friendship. And then, not too long after that was when I really started making, breakthroughs in the math that I realized were redefining, the claims and understanding about how these numbers function, that it didn't actually work like everybody else had thought, and it was a shock to me and a shock to a lot of other people. And so, Marco and I have gotten to know each other through that process and just maintain that relationship. I always say that he's my teacher. I mean, I never really studied with him per se. We've had lots of conversations about this, but I wasn't really able to converse with him until I kind of just understood the language on my own. And, then we were able to develop on that because he's always very preoccupied with lots of different things. But through everybody who's worked on the math in depth has only ever been able to confirm the claims that I've made, and as that's gone further into what I'm really more focused on now, and into prime numbers and how that relates to a variety of subjects.
Okay, that's great. I didn't know that. We can talk about prime numbers too, because I did a research on that myself. But let me go back to Marco first. When I go now to his website, it seems rather dead to me. Have you any idea what he's doing at this moment?
Yeah, he's living out in the desert. I saw him a few months ago when I was out there. I took a trip out with my wife and visited him and his daughters. And he's living with some friends, and he's getting by. But yeah, he's not in a very functional situation by any means. And he's really he's got some people who are trying to help him, and we're all involved trying to help it. It's a very difficult process, and Marco has specific needs and specific ways that he wants things done in his realm, and so we're all working on hopefully being able to get it there. I think myself and some of my friends who are working in this are also interested in some of the incremental steps that can help us get off the ground, and so we've been working a lot and some real world applications with fantastic battery chargers that work at really high efficiency, some solar interfacing technologies, a lot of things with the coils and all of that. So but it's an open research. It goes in so many different directions. But he's still around. He's still going, and we're hoping to keep him around for a while.
Okay. I'm happy to hear that. Yeah, when people go to your website, Randy, the akbakingda.com, we'll talk about the word abga later on. But first, the video you have right on your homepage, you give a marvelous speech, very excellent to me. Where you claim a lot of things that will happen soon based on this new kinds of mathematics, or based on this language of God, so to say, and by learning it and by being able to speak it. That was in 2010, if I'm right. So we're now nearly two years later. Can you give us some insight in the progress that have been made since then? Because when I listen to all the beautiful things that have been said there, about free energy, traveling in space, healthcare, all those things. What has already been put into practice at this moment? Okay.
Well, let me say leading into that one thing about the TED Talk that is, I just like to try and inform people that my original talk for TED, when I was asked to speak, was 10 pages long. I naively thought I was going to be able to read through that. Upon practicing it, once I found out I only had 8.5 minutes, that 10 pages was cut down to about 1.5 pages, which is what I delivered at TED. So there was a lot of information that I had wanted to kind of qualify, a lot of statements, and explain what I meant when I said that there was just no time for. So I think the talk came over as a little bit more drastic than what I intended it to be originally. But to answer the question about these things, do I think all these things that I said are possible? I do. I can explain some of what's been done and some of the ideas behind them. I think the claims went something like, said inexhaustible energy has been one of the claims. Sometimes that's referred to as 0 point or over unity energy. There's a lot of different names for it. As far as an over unity device, I think there are several people out there who are on YouTube who have achieved the technical definition of over unity because they're doing things like being able to charge 2 batteries with 1, or, you know, ultimately they're still drawing on a source, but they're outputting a lot more than what they're taking in. You know, it needs a lot of further research, but there's been very sufficient proof of concept on that area. So whether or not there's inexhaustible energy capabilities, I can't say for 100%. You know, from a theoretical standpoint, as in terms of modeling atoms with this, I mean, I think we do see those behaviors in what we call the electron, in terms of its non-decaying spin, and I do think we're able to model pathways for that type of motion. In terms of a practical device, we haven't created that. My interest in that, more so than copper coils, would be, ionized plasma coils, or the types of things that are being used already in toroidal fusion research, just with a different pathway and a different approach. What were some of the other things I said? In terms of diseases, the whole nature of the idea about being able to cure diseases is that the DNA helix is a geometrical shape that isn't just arbitrarily in that shape, but is in fact held in that shape by what we call flux fields, or just what can generally be measured as magnetic fields, that exist in the major groove of DNA, and that all the activity that's going on inside of DNA, and when you're talking about docking up with receptor sites and all that is going on, that activity is prevalent and being controlled by the major groove and by the magnetic fields in there, so that the DNA itself functions like an electrical coil. And those fields are known to be there. They've been found and documented in research. The standard explanation for that is that DNA is made up of phosphates, which have a negative electric charge, and so there's an associated magnetic field. But, the conjecture that Marco made and that I support is that, the fact that the base 10 decimal system naturally forms into this geometric shape and models a magnetic field in that groove, and the fact that it's there, they cannot be merely coincidental. So at the very least, it warrants further investigation. I haven't personally done a lot of work in studying genetic sequencing and all that. I would like to. It's a big interest of mine. I kind of tried to go a little more basic and go right to the periodic table, and I've been having a little more success with that, though it would be wonderful if I had a great chemist to work with.
Yeah, because in one of your videos you actually make that claim, and that made me really curious, but you're still working on that, if I hear you correctly now.
Well, I can't even say that I'm working on it a lot right at the moment. I have done some work on it, and I believe that the prime numbers are very key. And so I've been building off some other work that some chemists have done in prime numbers and the periodic table, and now with how I've been able to show how the vortex mathematical system is generating prime numbers out of the base 10 system, then that becomes a lot more of an approachable task. So I would say that I have the method to do it. I just have not had the support or the physical time to do it. All the support and research I've gotten has solely gone towards applications for coils. That's what everybody was interested in. So we've gone further in research on that than I would say in any other topic, except for pure mathematics, which I've gone, really far into.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because on your website you also have advanced stuff, but it's mostly about the coil, and then especially about the 36 by 18 coil, the torus, I mean.
Right.
But
it was advanced at the time. I mean, at the time, actually, the advanced videos were done before the other videos. Those were the very first videos I put out, and the only reason I called it advanced was just because I figured if somebody doesn't have any idea, if they haven't watched Marco's videos, they're not going to understand what I'm talking about. I understood more when I did the second videos, but since then, there's so much that has been refined and understood better that needs to be updated with that.
Yeah, that's the problem when you get more insight, the more you study it, and the better you understand the language of God, the mathematics. Can we talk about the name, Abha? Where does it come from, Randy? Is it from the Middle East? A long time ago?
Well, I guess my answer to the question would be that it doesn't come from anywhere, but that it's always been there, and that we see evidences of it in various cultures and various times. For instance, where you guys are in Sweden, is that correct?
No, in the Netherlands.
In the Netherlands, okay, I'm sorry, excuse me. Well, for instance, I mean, you see that the technical answer in terms of vortex-based mathematics is that Abha is what's called the most great name of God in the Baha'i faith, which comes out of Iran, in about the 1840s, 1850s, in that area. And there was a prophet who called himself Baha'u'llah, which just means the glory or the light of God. That Baha is the comparative case of the word. Its superlative or supreme case is Abha, which is said to be the spiritual world within this world. And the most great name of God is said to contain all the names of God within it. And by pronouncing it correctly, you could embody all the different qualities of the names of God. And it was actually the sound that God used to create the universe. And that God continually uses to sustain and perhaps even destroy universes. So Marco initially discovered this equation because of the mathematics encrypted in the Baha'i scriptures, and we can go into that story if you want. But just to go back to what you were asking, that's where we see it in that particular case in time. I mean, it's also because my background and my education is really in philosophy and religion, or where I did all my college studies, and I got into this in the same way through the linguistics and the interest in the mathematics of language as really the basis of all knowledge and intelligence. And another place you see it, for instance, where I've done a lot of research is in Buddhism. They have Amitabha, Abha, which is the same, means infinite light. The Abha is the same meaning in the Sanskrit, apparently, or that may be from Pali. You have in more in the area of the world where you are, from the Norse, in the Eddas and everything, they talk quite extensively about the number 9. And you see it everywhere there, whether it's the 9 worlds or what have you. And I actually think the word Valhalla is the same, like Baha'u'llah. The V and the B are actually interchangeable. And in the ancient languages, B's were not what in phonetics is called a bilabial stop, which means that your lips come all the way together. It's actually pronounced more like a V. And you actually still hear that in several languages. Spanish is one example, where the B and the V sound, not the actual letter, but the sound, are interchangeable. So it's a very common phonetic expression, and so the ab is said to be male or masculine, it's compression. The ha is feminine, it's decompression. And the way that we say it, which I go into, I think, on the later videos that I have up there where I actually do the pronunciation, it's said all as one sound, where you're actually pronouncing it all as one. It's what's referred to in many scriptures, from things like the Eddas to the Bible. It's the trumpet blast. And
can you make that sound for us?
Sure. So it's actually not made by, you don't close the lips, which then disperses the vibration, and you don't open the mouth wide, which does the same as well. You're creating a singularity sort of with your intonation, but the singularity is an aperture. It's an eyeball, it's a hole, like a vortex well. And so when you bring the lips almost to where they're closing, right where the B and the H meet, and the A, which is the aleph in Arabic or Persian, which is actually not a vowel. It's said that the aleph, which is represented by a straight line, is a consonant. It's made by the glottal stop in the throat. But the hamza is said to be, it's like the breath, so it sustains. And so the A, which is represented by the 1, is then the eternal sustenance. So when you make the shape of the lips, it sounds kind of like, so that's kind of how I do it.
Wow.
I don't know that anyone really knows, but the idea for me is that it's the fastest sound that you can make. It's like all sounds combined into the most fast vibration that you can create with your breath and your mouth. And so I believe that it's the extreme speed and immediacy of the resonance that is actually affecting the brain, and how you can use it to tap into a higher inspiration or intelligence.
Wow, this is very remarkable, Randy. Thank you for demonstrating this. In the beginning...
It's a very broad topic. I hope I'm not going from one thing to another too quickly, but...
No, what we do in this radio talk show, Randy, is just addressing things. People want to know more, because we are not able to cover everything that you've done on this subject in 1 hour. That's totally impossible. So people who are curious, they will go to your website, theakbakingdom.com, and they will find a lot of videos and also this demonstration. So very great. Yeah, in the Bible it also says that in the beginning it is the word, something like that. I'm not really having the right words here in English, but maybe it's this word that you just showed us, demonstrated us. So
yeah, in Greek it was called the Logos.
Mm-hmm.
It's just a primal source for linguistic sounds.
Okay, great. Let's go to the primes, Randy. I also did a small article of just 3 pages. I will send it to you, and for the listeners, I will put a link under this broadcast. But did you know that when you square all the primes and then you calculate the single-digit value of each of those outcomes, then all results are all in the cipher group of 1, 4, and 7?
That is true, except for 1 prime, and that would be 3.
Oh, yeah, I'm sorry, yeah, but, okay, I have to explain. To me, 2 and 3 are not primes in my rhythm, but that will be a little bit of long discussion.
Well, I may be able to agree with you on that.
Yeah.
Of course, with 2, it's just a prime by default, and most mathematicians will agree with you on that. Or at least they won't fight with you too hard about it, because there's no way to go any further with that by the standard definitions of primes. With the number 3, what I was able to show why the base 10 is so significant is because modular 9 is based on 3 squared, which is fundamentally distinct from every other prime. Which, as you said, with the exception of 2, but let's just all assume 2 is not a prime, so let's remove 2 from the discussion for the moment. If we leave 2 out, 3 stands as completely unique among all the other primes in that regard, according to what you just said. And 3, what I found, the base 10 system, is the only system where it produces one unified geometrical shape where all the functions of all possible multiplication, division, addition, or subtraction series are all occurring simultaneously. That does not occur with any other valid geometrical base system. Now, every valid geometrical base system has to be based on a prime squared. So your next valid one would be base 26 or modular 25. But you need at least 2 geometrical solids to produce all the multiplication series for the base 26. And it gets more and more complex as you go further. So that's one way in which the base 10 is completely unique. And also, all primes are able to be produced from a very simple equation, very simple series. There is a pattern, and it starts with the number 5. And so from there, from 5 on, all the other primes are produced out of that fundamental system, which is hexagonally polarized. It's not, some people have gotten onto this and they say it's because it's base 6. It's not base 6. It's that the base 10 system is hexagonally polarized, and that's what's generating primes. So primes are polarized hexagonally just like anything, just like light. That's how it works. Everything polarizes hexagonally.
Exactly, yeah. That's what I tried to explain in the beginning of that paper, but I think we're going to lose all the listeners if we go into that. But the hexagonal shape of everything, that's so remarkable. The division by 6 is so, remarkable. Also in the Vortex-gebaseerde mathematics, the series from 1, 2, 4, 8, 7, 5, and so on. So,
and no matter what base system you use, the 3, 6, and 9 is a fundamentally different series from everything else.
Yeah. Okay, this is marvelous. Have you been able, Randy, to talk to universities, to mathematicians, and try to explain the beauty of this new kind of mathematics? Were you able to interest them and even maybe give a lecture about it on the universities?
I think the simplest way to answer that is to say my success rate at contacting universities, actually being able to schedule an appointment to meet with a professor or do anything in any way has been 0 and the unsuccessful. But on the other side of that, I will say, and to my surprise in many occasions, my success rate in personal conversations with academic mathematicians and scientists has been very, very high in terms of them being convinced that I was describing something unknown and unique in mathematics with very promising applications in technology. And to me, that's good enough. If they're not, they may not be willing to accept that we're going to transcend light speed in an electrical craft, but they're at least willing to go that far. And to me, that at least puts us on a playing field, which is really where I'm trying to see it.
Yeah, but that's never on a formal basis. That's always on a personal basis, I think.
Yeah, some of them are scared, or some of them just don't care enough to try and get me out there, or for whatever it is. I'm always open, and I have said, if there's anyone ever wants to put an invitation, I'm always open to academic forums. I do not shy away from them, and I'm willing to debate my mathematics with anyone from any university, and I'm that confident in it. I've never been shown to be wrong in any conversation that I had in terms of these basic statements that I'm making about math, which I insist must fundamentally make us reconsider what we think about numbers. So it affects all math.
Exactly, yeah. I have the same experience, so that's really recognizable. And another question for you, Randy. I think this is also marvelous for children to make the multiplication tables and the division tables, if they are actually taught, more interesting, because the patterns are so beautiful. Have you had any experience with trying to help teachers understand this and make mathematics for young people more interesting?
Yeah, I've actually taught some classes recently, some volunteer classes I did to try and help some kids work on the stuff. And my approach to education, basically, I pretty much take the classical approach and my interest about education in the sense of I really like the methods of the trivium and the quadrivium, which a lot of people are talking about now. I kind of came at it more from just the training I had in philosophy and debate. But the idea, particularly in the quadrivium, which is a lot of what I use to teach kids, and so for people who aren't familiar with that, they're called the 7 liberal arts. You have the trivium, which is grammar, logic, and rhetoric, which isn't so much about what you're learning, but how you learn and how you assess information and how you process honestly and assess information correctly and linguistically. And then, particularly with the vortex math, the quadrivium, which is composed of 4 parts. And the first is numbers, or arithmetic, which is what we're demonstrating in everything we're doing, that times, divide, plus and minus is a closed system that produces all numbers, be they prime numbers or whatever they are. Whatever kinds of numbers you want to define are part of that system. The second part is geometry, which is defined as numbers in space, which I think we're the first mathematics to radically assert that numbers are inherently dimensionalized and geometrical. And that we live in a 3-dimensional world because it is based on that perfection of the base 10 or modular 9 system. So numbers in space is geometry. Then you learn music, or harmony, which is numbers in time. That's resonance, vibration. That's the sound and the physics of that. And then the fourth subject, sometimes called astronomy, or more broadly called cosmology, which would contain all of our current sciences. So really what you do is you learn how to learn. You learn the basics of logic in terms of linguistics, and then even more importantly, mathematics. and then you apply that, then you learn your information, and you apply those methods to learning. And what I find with the kids is, when they have those skills, they're able to learn and process a far greater amount of information than they are when they're taught everything analytically and separately, because they have the tools to make connections. And I was honored recently to have dinner with a young guy who was really, I was really impressed. The joke about him was that, this kid is so smart that he tutors the Chinese students, in math. And it's actually true, and the Chinese students are known to excel so well in the math. And I thought this kid was gonna try and tear me apart, and I had this conversation with him about the numbers in the math, and he came away very convinced by it. And I was impressed by that. I wasn't expecting that outcome, meeting him, and he told me at the end, he said, with all this knowledge that he had and everything that he was learning in school, and he would blow me out of the water in terms of his detailed knowledge of sciences, he said they don't teach you how to make connections. And that's where he found the real value. And that is the value in knowledge. That, to me, is the essence of human intelligence, is our ability to associate and make connections. And it's why it's so difficult for computers to emulate our most basic human calculations.
Yeah, I fully agree on this, Randy. What we see in the universities, but in fact in our whole society, is a little bit, very much divide and conquer. Everything has been divided into pieces, and there is not much connection. And the beauty of holy science, as I like to call it, is science that connects everything. People who want to know more about this can go to the website pateo.nl and then go to Pateo Academia. You also find your name there, Randy, and your website and your subject. But there's also a small figure, and it's showing exactly what you just described. It shows harmony and the three aspects of harmony, namely numbers, geometry, and music. Just like you explained, numbers is geometry. Geometry is numbers in space, and music is numbers in time. So it's it's all there. It's fully.
And then cosmology, of course, which I didn't mention, is numbers in space and time. So that's where you really put it together. Exactly.
Yeah. So, but yeah, I only have three there, but the combination is geometry, but of cosmology. But when you see a number of people who are in our group, so to say, the Pateo Academia, for one of them is Carlos Bonacci, and he knows a lot about what he calls astrotheology, and how all the stories in the ancient books, the holy scriptures, so to say, are all about the dynamics in the cosmos, in the heavenly bodies. But we'll not go into that, Randy, because
absolutely.
Yeah, okay.
I agree.
Yeah. Okay, fascinating. What are your plans for at this moment? What are you working on?
Well, I'm trying to just stay afloat right at the moment. I am helping my wife a little bit with the restaurant, but I'm trying to just communicate with a lot of people and hopefully keep our project alive. I've traveled a lot in the last year and been all over the place, and honestly it's been a little hard on me being away from my family, and there's just not enough money there to really get things done. So in some ways I've been just sort of waiting and not seeing a lot of results. But people who are actually interested in doing things, I'm all about connecting, and I have an open door policy. Anybody can contact me on Skype. My Skype is Randy VBM, as in Vortex-gebaseerde mathematics. And whenever I have time, I just get on and people call, and we talk and try and see what we can do, and I try to share the information I can. I'd love to see more education about this, more videos. There's an infinite, so much intricate work that's been done that really needs to be explained and revealed, particularly when you get into these base systems. The computer, the encryption, all these kind of applications are just stellar and outstanding, but I just don't have the legal protection to get involved. I've been all the way into several of the large companies that you would know in Silicon Valley, and had great meetings. But our project is such an intellectual properties nightmare, and I don't have a lawyer to really protect me, in order to make it comfortable for me to get involved. And so we're in a difficult situation of how to, I guess if I wanted to be quiet and never talk to anyone about anything I was doing, then I could have a job right now, and probably a good one. But I just don't want to see it go that way. If Marco had been that way, I wouldn't have what I have now, which if nothing else is a better understanding of my world. And I would like to share in that process of getting it to other people. And, so my hope is to keep that alive, but I'm also just working to survive, Honestly, I tell fortunes right now. That's what I do for a living. I do readings for people because I can do it, and so people, that's kind of how I'm surviving.
Yeah, but I think that companies need to have a different mindset about this. I work with people who work on free energy, and they do everything open source. So the moment they've discovered something, they immediately put it online. And knowing that nobody is able to keep up with them because they are so developing so fastly. So what you can say is that you're on the cutting edge of insight in vortex-based mathematics and how the language of God is actually to be spoken. And if companies are interested, then they can work with you, and then they know they're at the front. But the condition should be that all information, all new knowledge has to be put online immediately as soon as this has been discovered, because everybody has a right to know. It's knowledge of everybody. So maybe when people are listening to this radio broadcast and they are in the neighborhood of North Carolina or maybe in that state, and they can work with you, that would be great, because I think that you're one of the geniuses, Randy, on numbers and the dynamics of numbers, and I think.
Well, thank you. It takes one to know one. No.
Yeah, I've been doing some research, of course, myself, but sometimes I have to play back a little bit what you're saying, because it's not, especially when you talk about the vortex, the dynamics of the torus, and how to jump from one square to the other, then you easily lose me, because that's too complicated for me to easily follow. But
well, it's not your fault. It's not your fault. It's that it's all visual, So really, what I'm explaining is easy, but you're just not able to see it because it's not made readily visually available to you. And that's why I haven't put up a lot more work, because everything that we're doing is simple. The principles are simple. Even when you're doing base 842 or whatever, the principles are the same. They're simple. There's an algorithm that produces it all. And so if you know what I have up in my videos and the basics, you have all the tools. But to do the further work, yes, it gets very complex or hard to grasp without visual. But once we get to the point where we can have 3D animators is what we really need right now.
Exactly, yes.
3D animators who can highlight particular areas of the torus, and so while I explain, you can actually be visually watching it on a video. And that's my number one goal, is to get those kind of videos produced, because once you see it in visual, you'll understand it, everybody will understand it, because I'm not particularly even talented with this stuff, I'm just stubborn and I work hard. It's not that I'm some kind of math whiz. So, I think that it's really just, I would think it would be stupid for everyone to try and reinvent the wheel and just put themselves through what I had to go through to learn what I learned. It would be much easier if they could just learn it, and then they could go way past me, and that's just how things advance. If everyone's trying to learn just from the beginning, it doesn't go very well. You know?
No. To be a great man is a great man who can stand on the shoulders of giants. So, and that's how scientific progress is going on. We all are great men in our own way, but people can step up onto our shoulders and become even greater, because we should not be. We should allow everybody to excel and to have full insight in the true nature of everything and true understanding of the cosmos. And when we do have that knowledge, then we can become space travelers. Then we can explore, and we can go even further than we've ever imagined to be. So, and
there's no reason to teach unless you're hoping that your students will transcend you. You know. Exactly.
Yeah. No, everybody wants to make a contribution, to make a significant step forward. So I'm very happy with your work. I think you have done also a lot of work by making all the big diagrams, the gigantic diagrams and all the numbers, seeing how it works together, and coming up with a different structure for the coil, the Rodin coil. That must have also been mind-blowing or breaking for you to come up with that. Can you tell the listeners how that process went? You saw that something was not right, and then you start to make all kinds of difficult diagrams?
Yeah. Yeah, you should see the base, I think it was 842 or some crazy huge base system I did just to show how it worked, and that's a big diagram, but, what actually happened with the whole thing was I had been working on doing the stuff and designing the coils. My main interest in all this was this idea that we had about, or that Marco had originally, about underpinning nested vortices, which are like sunspots or vortices that go over the surface topology that balance and regulate the flow of the torus. They're like eddy currents. Mm-hmm. And the idea was that that these eddy currents serve to accelerate energy, and that's what would help ultimately concentrate and control the field at the center. So those eddy currents were supposed to have a sequence order, and so just like anything, if they exist, they have a sequence order. They have relationships. They're represented by numbers, if they're discrete entities of any kind. And so when I was looking at those patterns, it just didn't match up with the way that the coil was supposed to be wound. I didn't understand it, but we didn't have any 3D models. No 3D toruses existed that I had ever seen, or I don't think Marco had them either. And then Marco was telling me that the toruses don't connect, that it doesn't work, that they were never able to generate the numbers in the right way. They had a computer program to do it and everything, and it never worked. And that kind of blew my mind, and then I was like, oh, well. So then I came up with a method for being able to calculate where I could move along any axis, whether up or down or left or right, and I would know where every number was on every other axis, and I didn't have to, just by simply moving in one direction. So I could know by going along a horizontal axis, when I came to another point, I could know where the circuit was coming out. Mm-hmm. It's a little bit confusing, again, to say verbally, but it's not really that hard when it's explained to you. And so I was able to actually mentally model the space, and I realized that it wasn't working like that. So then eventually we got those big flat sheets of paper and just had to draw it out and calculate it by hand. And what I found is that my solution was correct. I scaled it as far up and down as I needed to for my own satisfaction, and the process never changed. And I realized that this is, not only was it a different way, but it's the only way that these numbers can work like this. So if there's any truth to the torus, this is how it works. And so it's not a criticism of Marco's coil as a coil per se. It's just simply to find out what is the truth behind the numbers and the mathematics. And I found for these vortexes to be able to sequence at all, you had to have separate circuits, and they had to be polarized essentially in a triangulation or a hexagonal configuration.
Okay, I'm hoping that we've not lost all our listeners by this moment, but I think I can follow you. But I hope there are more. If you couldn't follow what Randy was saying, then please do some research. There are marvelous videos on his website, and what I've learned is you can only master it when you start to make your own diagrams, when you start to do the maths, when you start to make calculations, and just like riding a bicycle, you can watch all the videos you want, but the fun part starts when you start actually to do it. And I think the same is here with this language of God, the mathematics, the vortex-based mathematics. The fun part starts when you start doing it and when you start to see the beauty of it and the rhythms and the reoccurring patterns and all those things. That's to me.
The verb in this sense, it's something that you do, and it's just like riding a bike. I mean, everything I learned, like from doing martial arts and doing different things, is you can read all the secret treatises you want, but if you don't get in there and train, you're gonna feel it.
Yeah,
so
true.
It's just the same with the math,
It's another thing that we have in common, martial arts, but we will not go into that detail. Great, yeah. I think we have a lot in common, Randy. I'm very happy that you were on this show. Let me say to the listeners once more, if you want to learn more about vortex-based mathematics, go to the website of Randy, theabbakinden.com. We will also put the links under the broadcast of this radio talk show with some other links as well. For future radio shows, because I'm not doing a radio show every Monday in English, Pateo Radio is broadcasted every Monday night. Monday night in the European time zone, the Central European time, 8 p.m. But I also have broadcast in Dutch, so for English-speaking listeners, it's not very interesting, I think. On April the 30th, then Billy Dale Lawhall will be my guest, and on May 7, I have Troy McLachlan, who will talk about the planet of Saturn. Anyway, Randy, thank you very much for being in the show.
Thank you so much for having me. It was really an honor and a pleasure, and I hope we should do it again.
Yeah, one final question, Randy. Are there people in your direct environment that are working with you, or are you a little bit solitary working on all this stuff at the moment?
I'm a little bit solitary where I am. I have a few friends locally who, check up on me, but for the most part, I'm working alone right now.
Okay, then we definitely need to keep in contact with Skype or email or whatever, because I find your work very stimulating, and maybe I can also help you to be stimulated as well. We'll see about that.
Well, thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Okay, everybody, thanks for listening, and hope to hear you in another Pateo Radio talk show. Bye bye for now.
There's a reason for my teaching, even though I can't explain. More than a dream that you are reaching, more than a laugh that shadows all the pain. A special meaning in the thorn of dreams, in the garden where a thought can blind me. 'Cause I am lost here, where it never gleams, where I found that I screamed so blindly. Yeah. Until I rise up, fall down. It's just the reason that I can't feel the ground. Am I waiting for my tomorrow, or should I say goodbye? surface. As I wait, I'm drowning in the rain. Just when I thought that it was over, I lost my grip and I hit the wall. A simple dream that I tripped over. Now I have to wake up to my fall, until I rise up, fall down. Is this the reason that I can't feel the ground? Am I waiting for my tomorrow, or should I say goodbye?
Dit is Ergens Oog Radio.
Een andere